South was based on agriculture, when cotton and sugarcane was king. But now, as you know, those times are long since past. Thankfully, places like Nottoway have been preserved as repositories of the heritage of the Old South. But now they stand locked in time, and time, believe me, has been a-changing. The New South is a totally different place. Hi, I'm Brock Yates, and I don't have to tell you that the New South is a booming economy, built down here in Louisiana around chemicals and natural gas, and in some ways the automobile. In fact, just up the road here in Baton Rouge, we've got one of the greatest drag races on the whole NHRA scene, the Cajun Nationals. For more on that, let's go to my pal, Steve Evans.
Brock, in many ways, State Capitol Dragway relates more to that Old South than it does to new. You won't find a lot of concrete, glass, and steel out here. What you will find is a good, solid old country racetrack. And unlike a lot of those so-called super tracks that only open their gates once or twice a year, here at State Capitol Dragway, they run all year long. Guys and gals coming off the street with their hot rods, drag racing in a safe and organized manner. But once a year, as they have for 11 summers, the National Hot Rod Association comes to town with their traveling acceleration show. And their crack team installs all the latest in electronic gear and puts on as good a professional drag race as you'll find anywhere in the country in front of a very devoted crowd. And as maybe you've seen before, we can always count on the Cajun Nationals for incredible action.
Absolutely, Steve, and they started off with a bang earlier today in first round top fuel action. Veteran Hank Endres going against the man, Big Daddy Don Garlits.
And as you'll notice, Endres, the first driver to copy Don Garlits' enclosed cockpit. There's Hank from the New England area driving the John and Shirley Carey car. He's had more success in this car than he ever did in his own. And of course, there's the man, Big Daddy Don Garlits, the living legend in drag racing, who earlier this year exceeded the 270-mile-an-hour barrier. Now, Garlits was in the near lane. We see him here. Hank Endres in the far lane. And it didn't take long after the start for the action to begin. Standing right on in is Hank Endres, and the car crashes to the pavement in the far lane. Garlits goes on to win at 560, 254 miles per hour.
But the big excitement on the run was Endres. And look at this. He's going to head for the alignment shop with that one, Steve. Just smashed the front axles when he came down off that wheel stand.
Absolutely, suffering some severe toe-in. Now watch the far lane. Now that is Endres, an early advantage. He is actually ahead of Garlits. Suddenly, as the front end starts to rise, the car gets lighter and lighter on the front. Now the air gets under the belly pan of that car and just holds it up there at a very high attitude. A good job of driving in many ways.
Well, Steve, over the years, some of the top fuel cars have gotten away from wheelie bars. The funny cars and the top alcohol cars still carry them. Hank didn't have wheelie bars, and that contributed to that launch he had there. I wonder if some of the guys watching in the pits say, maybe we ought to put him back on again.
I wouldn't be surprised. This was also in round number 1 earlier today. Dan Pastorini in the far lane, who won the last event on the circuit, the Southern Nationals in Atlanta, Georgia, of course, the former NFL great. And he was up against Shirley Muldowney, whose comeback this year has not been quite as smooth as she would have liked. In fact, she has gone winless so far.
Well, most of her problems are mechanical. Over the last few events, she's just blown motors left and right. But right now, she went off a good start, a good drag race between Muldowney and Pastorini. And at the last wink, it was Muldowney.
And you know, earlier this morning, Brock, she told me, I just got a feeling I might sack me a quarterback today.
5:57 for Shirley Muldowney, so that'll put her into the second round. Let's look at it again. Dan Pastorini in the black car gets a little bit of a start on Shirley Muldowney, but at half track, it's the pink race car from Michigan that moves out to take command, but only by a few feet as they go through the lights almost together. Shirley Muldowney moves into the second round.
Well, Dan Pastorini was the first one over to congratulate Shirley Muldowney. A tremendous elapsed time of 5.57 here in round number 1. That makes the lady smile. She and Dan are very much friendly rivals, but that was one you felt you kind of owed him maybe from the Gainesville race, right?
He ran real good at Gainesville, but I think I gave it to him there. I was late, so I don't know, but I saw him a long time down the race course, Steve, and I had to use the lean-out button to kind of clean the system up because he was getting close to me.
I guess we could say a lady sacked the quarterback, huh?
Yeah, I heard that once before, I think, this morning. Yeah.
Good job.
Thanks, Dave.
Believe it or not, that was the first win for Shirley Muldowney in major NHRA competition this season.
Then we moved on to the first round of funny car competition. This man, the world champion, Kenny Bernstein, up against Johnny West in the famed Hawaiian car. Johnny West, who campaigned his own top fuel racers and funny cars for many years, certainly has earned the reward of driving as a paid professional. How dominant was Kenny Bernstein in winning the World Championship last season? Well, he won more events than all the competition combined, but so far has gone winless this season. Mechanical problems have just plagued the Ford tempo-bodied car in the near lane.
Suddenly, he's just one of the guys, which shows how quickly the advantage can change. But right now, Bernstein away. He was away a little bit quicker than West, but look at this. West moved by, smoked the motor, blew it apart in the lights, but Johnny West with a 583 puts away Kenny Bernstein in the first round.
I'll tell you, that looked to be Bernstein all the way, Brock. I'm sure anyone who was rooting for the red car thought it was in the bag.
Well, there you can see it. Bernstein, again, one of those mechanically beautiful, very disciplined starts that he's famous for. And he looks as if he's on his way to victory. But suddenly, in a burst of power, almost in the lights, West blows past him to victory.
Well, anytime you can dispose of the world champion in round number one, the rest of the day could get easier.
Well, not really. You never say easier to anybody.
Good drag race.
Oh, yeah, it was. He had me covered most of the track, and then I just left it in low until it just finally came around him. This thing's got some awesome mid-range. Roland just really got her tuned up right now.
Looks like Roland's going to be working on it, too, by the smoke I see.
Well, will be, but we're willing to pay the price. That's what we're here for.
Nice drive.
Thank you, Steve.
So that last second burst of horsepower disposed of the champion and left Kenny Bernstein a bit shocked.
Well, Kenny Bernstein, a tricky racetrack, some very difficult weather to race in, and it all boils down to a first-round loss, something you don't experience very often.
Got beat. That's all you can say. The Hawaiian punch car whipped us like a dog, and that's what happened today. But, you know, it's a long year. Let's keep saying that every time we interview lately, it seems like.
Johnny was saying you were ahead of him most of the racetrack.
Well, I didn't see him all the way until right before the first light, and he came right around me there. I was really surprised to see him at that stage, because usually by the time you get right before the first light, you're pretty much ready to go to the next round, but he came right around me.
Okay, sorry to see you out so early.
No problem. Thank you.
So Kenny Bernstein was finished for the day, but Johnny West, well, that crew of Roland Leong is back in the pits right now, changing engines. You saw that giant burst of smoke right in the lights, and that meant engine change for the Hawaiian team. And we'll be back with more action from the Citgo Cajun Nationals following this.
The sugarcane planter. It derives its name from the demand that Randolph made that there be no knots in the wood used to construct the house. When the workmen came upon a board with a knot in it, they threw it aside, saying, "Not away." But the crowd at State Capitol Dragway, Brock Yates, is saying, "Fire away."
Absolutely no wood here, just all aluminum and magnesium and exotic metals as Gary Beck gets ready to move in for second round action here at the Citgo Cajun National.
Well, here's a couple of real drag racing veterans. Joe Amato will be his opponent in the far lane, and of course Gary Beck. Both have earned world championships in their career. In fact, Beck has too. But both of them also learned how tough it is to defend those titles. When Beck won it in '83, Amato dominated in '84. Then Garlitz came back and took it away from Amato in '85. It's really hard to repeat those world titles in this class.
Now notice, Steve, that Joe Amato is also carrying a windscreen as begun by Big Daddy Don Garlitz earlier this year. We saw Hank Endries carrying one, and more movement towards streamlining is beginning to come into the top fuel class.
And also, the cockpit is far more comfortable with that canopy, Brock. The noise is less, the wind blast is reduced, and there's a certain safety factor there. It could deflect some flying parts. Gary Beck from Hemet, California, sporting a new growth of beard there, maybe until he wins his next NHRA event. Joe Amato, well, he's still clean-shaven from Pennsylvania, the operator of a very large auto parts distributing firm, and that's his wife, Jerry, backing him up after the burnout.
So it was Joe Amato who originated the very tall rear wing that you see on his car, but now he's also carrying the windscreen that Big Daddy Don Garlitz developed. So slowly we're seeing an evolution in drag racing toward the top fuel cars becoming more and more useful as far as aerodynamics are concerned.
Well, I would rate this race, Brock, a toss-up because both of these drivers have been struggling a little trying to find the proper mechanical combination. A lot of changes have been made to Joe Amato's car since the last race. The engine is much further back for more traction. Let's see what happens.
Good start by both drivers. String straight right down the drag strip and a close race. It's Gary Beck by inches. in the lights. Gary Beck moves in at a 5.68, 245 miles an hour, but you cannot have a whole lot closer race in Top Fuel competition. Let's take another look. Gary Beck's reaction time better by just a few thousandths of a second. For all intents and purposes, an even start and an even drag race all the way through the quarter mile. But here comes Gary Beck in a last-second charge to take the victory by a matter of only 3 feet.
Well, Gary Beck gets a semifinal round berth with a 5.68. Slowed down just a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, Steve. We're just, trying to keep our horsepower up. Very tricky weather here, but we're working on it. I'm pleased with that, ET. It's all right. Good place to kind of hang in there.
And a nice leave, too. You had a couple of hundredths of seconds in the bank when you left the line.
Well, that's good. Joe's hard to beat. You need everything you can get.
Did you get off the throttle a little early? It only ran 245. I say only, but that's slow by today's standards.
Well, this car is not notorious for its high speeds, but I went into about the ET light.
See you in the semis.
Thanks a lot.
So Gary Beck moves on after one of the closest drag races you'll ever see.
Joe, I know you've made a lot of changes to that car. Moving the motor back for more traction may take a little time to get it sorted out.
Yeah, Steve, the car isn't leaving the line. We need to get the 60-foot times better and get it to leave. So it's just once you make changes like that, you have to work at everything to get it all working in a combination. That's what separates the men from the boys. You got to keep going ahead, though. You can't ever look back.
I love the new canopy, Paisan under glass.
Yeah, that's a neat saying. We'll have to match up with what the Big has on his saying.
Okay, see you down the road.
Okay, thank you.
Joe, of course, referring to Big Daddy Don Garlitz, whose canopy says rat under glass. Memories of the old days when they called him the Swamp Rat.
Boy, look at this car, Brock. Is that a zoomy-looking machine? Gary Ormsby Streamliner from Northern California. The car had some problems debuting earlier this year with a blower explosion, then some personnel changes. But I'll tell you, it has all come together here at Baton Rouge. The #1 qualifier is Ormsby.
Almost an Indy car in drag racing configuration. Gary Ormsby, car dealer from Northern California, as you said. An excellent drag racer. He's going against Jody Smart, a real veteran. Moved away into the funny cars briefly, but now back in Top Fuel competition.
And this is the second car owned by John Kerry, whose first machine went out in that giant wheel stand with driver Hank Indris. Jody Smart very comfortable in that car in the far lane. He should be. He sold it to Kerry about 3 years ago. It's got a lot of runs on it. There's Gary Ormsby now teamed up with a new crew chief, Bob Brandt, who runs to Don Prudhomme to so many World Funny Car titles. And boy, I'll tell you, they are flying here today and have to rate as a favorite right now.
There is Jody Smart in the Kerry car and that Streamliner with those distinctive wheel pods protecting the rear wheels and giving it all that aerodynamic push. And look at this. Jody Smart whole shots Ormsby, but Gary uses big power to go on to victory.
And Brock, I wonder if Gary Ormsby just doesn't have so much confidence he wasn't about to push those lights. He felt he could let Smart get away just a little bit. Ormsby not wanting to take any chances of red lighting there.
So there you see it again. Jody Smart on the right side goes out first, a visibly quicker start. But the advantage is short-lived, to say the least. There goes Gary Ormsby with that beautiful Streamliner, just driving past Jody on to a relatively easy victory. So it looks as if the teething problems that plagued Ormsby's car earlier in the season are finally over.
Well, finally, Gary Ormsby's Streamliner is starting to demonstrate its potential. And Gary, a beautiful, smooth, near perfect 5.52.
Yeah, it felt real smooth. It was a nice, easy pass. Even better than the first round.
Addition of Bob Brandt couldn't hurt, right?
No, he's doing super for me. I'm real pleased with him. The crew and everybody.
The car doesn't appear to be shaking like it did before. It's just working.
No, this combination, Steve, is real simple, and it's working. I mean, it's just like driving a regular car on the street.
See you in the semis.
So that's the understatement of the day, as Gary describes driving a 3,000 horsepower Top Fueler like a street car. We'll be back with more of the Citgo Cajun Nationals. When the giant Nottoway plantation was built over 100 years ago, nothing but hand tools were used. You wonder what those men would think of today at the Cajun Nationals, where the computer is now king.
The fans in the stands must think that NHRA's chief announcer, Bernie Partridge, is a walking, talking encyclopedia of drag racing. Well, he is a very knowledgeable guy, but he's getting a lot of help these days from NHRA's new CompuLink computer system. Now, stored in this computer is the information on thousands of NHRA drag racers, both sportsmen and professionals. Their numbers are entered for the proper lane, and on the screen is displayed their name, where they're from, the kind of car they drive, the races they've won, their occupation, just about everything that Bernie would want to know. But more importantly, at the bottom of the screen, when the cars cross the finish line, up comes the winner, what he turned, both speed and elapsed time, his reaction time, also all of that information on the loser. So Bernie, by just sitting on a single stool, he was able to communicate with the crowd just about everything they could possibly want to know.
And right now, they want to know whether Shirley Muldowney can carry on with her one-race winning streak here at the Cajun Nationals as she gets ready to go against the veteran, Gene Snow.
Now, Gene Snow, who debuted a new car earlier this year, has that machine back in the shop for some more aerodynamic work, and he'll be very upfront about it. He's copying a lot of things that Big Daddy Don Garlits has done.
I would imagine, as a lot of other race teams as well, Steve, as we've seen Gary Ormsby and Big Daddy Don Garlits lead the way with streamlining and aerodynamics, and you can be sure others are going to follow.
And Brock, this may be the first time this year that Shirley Muldowney has sat in that car with a real feeling of confidence. Disposing of Dan Pastorini round one, the blower is staying on the car, everything is working right mechanically. She's got to feel good about it, and we may well again see that smile at the other end of the racetrack.
As far as Gene Snow is concerned, he's seen it all. Drag racing in funny cars and top fuel competition over the years, and a very stable, very cool, very, very collected race driver. Never seems to get rattled, ever, in the starting line sequence or in the middle of the racetrack.
Well, Gene Snow had one national event victory last year, the Fall Nationals in Phoenix, Arizona. And, of course, while Gene was out winning that race, Shirley Muldowney was going through more physical therapy. But she told me earlier, Brock, today that this race is the first time that she has experienced no pain whatsoever. She's feeling good, walking good, and just wants to win a race. Gene Snow is off the mark first. Gene Snow, the crafty old veteran with a big advantage. His car moving around at the middle of the racetrack. But it is Gene Snow disposing of Shirley Muldowney.
572, 238 miles an hour, fairly modest speed there. As you can see, Gene Snow kind of took the long way around. He was away first. He really had the race pretty much in hand, but about half track, the car began to weave a little bit, and there was a moment there when it looked as if Gene might cross the center line and disqualify himself. But he got it all gathered up and moved on to a relatively easy victory as Shirley seemed to lose power at the far end of the racetrack. Gene Snow, the winner.
Well, Gene, I guess that's why they put steering wheels on top fuel dragsters, to get you out of trouble.
Yeah, it was a little bit crooked. I can't believe we still got ahead, and he got ahead of her.
A 572.
Is that all it was? Well, we've been running 570s all weekend. We're lucky to be here.
Well, tell me about the drive. You were working in there.
Yeah, I don't know what. He just seemed to kind of move sideways on me, and I just backpedaled and got right back on it, and it hooked up. We were real lucky.
One tire maybe losing traction, or?
Yeah, I think it was out of the groove a little bit, which is hard to stay in the right side.
Stay in the semi.
Thank you.
So Gene Snow drives his way into the semifinal round. And here is the last race of the second round. That's Big Daddy Don Garlits and that unique streamliner that has revolutionized the sport this season. Against him, the upset-minded Dick LaHaye, a man who doesn't have the big financing, but has the big heart and the big desire. And now let's go to Steve, who's rounded up Shirley Muldowney.
Well, for Shirley, this has really got to be a disappointment because the car performed flawlessly in qualifying and in first round. Shirley, what happened?
Big disappointment, Steve. I think it smoked the tires. It shook pretty bad, so we'll see.
When it shakes, it loses traction.
You lose. Simple as that.
Did you see Gene all over the racetrack from where you were?
No, I didn't see him. Initially, I thought my car made a better move, and it just got out there and did nasty things, so we'll see.
Sorry to see you out so soon.
I'm sorry, too. Next week.
Well, there will always be a next week for the three-time world champion, one of the greats in this sport. As we watch Big Daddy Don Garlits get set to go, he has had a series of tire problems with his revolutionary car. Earlier, I had a chance to look at his latest solution.
You remember the Gator Nationals when Don Garlits appeared with his revolutionary front end, the streamliner that carried him to victory. But remember, he had some tire problems. The 13.5-inch spun aluminum wheels kept throwing treads. Don returned to the Southern Nationals with a different setup, a polyurethane strip on the wheels. It worked a little bit better, but he still wasn't happy. Now here at the Cajun Nationals, he's come with what he thinks is the real solution. These are aircraft tires, actually nose wheels off an aircraft, that have been tested up to 317 miles an hour without failure. They're 505 Goodyear airplane wheels, work perfectly for this particular setup, and Garlits is very, very pleased. Actually, the same OD, the outside diameter of the wheel is still 13.5 inches, so it fits underneath his streamlined nose, just like the old ones. But the stability, and more importantly, Don says the soft ride that he gets with these relatively low-pressure tires helps handling. So Garlett's, ever vigilant, ever leading the way, is on his way to yet another breakthrough in the sport. But I'll guarantee you one thing. This is only the beginning. Stick around. There's more in store.
The diameter of those specially made front wheels, about what you'd find on a kid's go-kart. Well, there is Kim LaHaye, crew chief for her dad, Dick LaHaye, a gal with an awful lot of ability and becoming very popular with the fans. We always talk about Dick LaHaye, the Buckstown independent racer. Well, he's run the second quickest elapsed time in history at 5.40 seconds.
He sure has. And this man, of course, the top speed record holder at over 270 miles an hour. So, a man who is just so good at the lights, Dick LaHaye, an upset-minded man, against what has to be the favorite here in this event.
And Don Garlits also brought the defending champion. It's a very hot, muggy day. Garlits knows how to race in these kind of conditions. Of course, being from Florida, it is LaHaye out first. It is LaHaye with the advantage. But Don Garlits, maybe it was the aerodynamics that pulled him through. Don Garlits, once it goes into the semis at 5:49, a very good number on this racetrack.
Absolutely, 258 miles an hour. Let's look again. Once more, Dick LaHaye never flinches in the face of the big names. He is away just a few winks slower than Garlits, but his launch is beautiful, and he gets out. It looks as if almost in front of Garlits at half track, but then the big streamliner from Florida moves on to victory by a full car length and advances into the semifinals.
The only car to invade the 540 territory in round number 2 is Don Garlits, a beautiful 549.
Very good, very good. It's really hard to run out here in this temperature. You know, we're having a hard time today with it. That first round, you know, we really laid down when we dropped the hole, so maybe we got the handle on it now.
Well, I can see your fire suit just came back from the cleaners.
Yeah, it surely did.
And a good speed. What kind of speed can you run in this kind of humidity, though?
I don't know. It's tough. Be tough to run 270.
But if I know you, you'll try anyway.
Well, we're trying. We got that backup, you know. We could go to 270.55.
Beautiful pass.
Thank you.
Garlits referring to his desire to run a 270-mile-an-hour top speed here to establish an official NHRA national record. So it'll be Garlits versus Gary Back in the semifinals. The other pairing, Gary Ormsby and Gene Snow. Gary, of course, having the lane choice with the lower ET.
And as those teams thrash in the pits, the funny cars roll out of the staging lanes. We'll be back with more from the Citgo Cajun Nationals.
Plaquemine Locks is about 10 miles away from the state capitol dragway. It was designed by the very same man who designed the Panama Canal, Colonel George Goethals. But that isn't all there is to see around the Baton Rouge area, including right at the drag strip.
There's a lot to see and do here in the pits at the Cajun Nationals. In addition to over 500 race cars, there's a terrific display of street rods from a local Baton Rouge club. How about this 23T Ford Roadster pickup? Goes a little faster than Henry intended with a supercharged small block Chevrolet. Next, there's an absolutely perfect 39 Chevrolet two-door sedan with two-tone paint. The Chevrolet, the body, the interior, perfect. And these guys drive these cars on the street every day, back and forth to work. How about an all-black and beautiful 40 Ford? Well, I say all black with the exception of flames on the hood and the front fenders. I love flames. And finally, this absolutely beautiful metallic blue 35 Ford two-door. Everything chromed and polished. This car is just perfect. And remember, these people enjoy these cars. They don't just display them, they drive them. And you know about the best investment you can make when you go to an NHRA national event? A few extra dollars for a pit pass. You can see it all up close.
Well, you can't get quite this close. That's where our cameraman is as he gets ready to shoot the second round in Funny Car, and that is Tim Gross, who's going up against the Mongoose, Tom McEwen.
Well, Tim Gross started the season out right, Brock. He won the NHRA Winter Nationals, Pomona, California, back in February. Tom the Mongoose McEwen with the roof hatch open, trying to get some fresh air in and some smoke out of the cockpit. McEwen has a couple of national event victories to his credit over a long, long career. But teamed up now with crew chief Bill Schultz. I look for that car to have a very good season.
Well, remember earlier, Tim Gross tried some aerodynamics in his Funny Car, but went back to a more classic body style. Not so for Tom McEwen, who stays with his Corvette-bodied Funny Car and runs very consistently. A real old pro, Steve.
Indeed, and quite a contrast between these two. McEwen, who's laid back, kicked back. Tim Gross, well, he kind of wears his feelings on the outside. He's got so much desire that it just oozes out of every pore in his body. It is Gross in the near lane. It is McEwen in the far lane. And it is Gross away first. Tim Gross with a bit of a hole shot. Here comes McEwen, another great race. And Tom McEwen may have sacrificed a motor to win here. A 578 at 249 miles per hour. Tim Gross checks out early.
A good race, though, as Tim Gross, hole shots, Tom McEwen. Good reaction time on the part of Tim Gross, but it does not pay off at the far end of the racetrack as Tom McEwen lets it all hang out, including probably a couple of connecting rods, as he scatters his motor in the lights, but goes on to victory and into the semifinals here at the Citgo Cajun Nationals.
Well, I have a feeling when the tires started to smoke right off the starting line, Tom McEwen thought it was probably all over.
Lucky as I've been this year, how can you say that?
Good driving job. You pedaled it nicely.
Thank you. Yeah, here we are trying to, we got through the first round on a single, you know, and then we beat him on the second round. So we're just running one at a time and hope it's our day.
Little bit of smoke out of her at the finish line.
What a run on the run, do you know?
578.
Oh, good, okay. That's fine.
Especially considering the traction problem.
I'll take that. Okay. Thank you.
Tom McEwen was referring to his first round victory over John Martin, a bye-run when John from California was unable to make the line.
That's right, Brock. He exploded a motor in qualifying and just couldn't get it back together. This man, Johnny West, in that red and blue car, he exploded a motor intentionally in round number 1, so that's an unknown commodity under his fiberglass hood. Scott Coletta, second-generation drag racer, Ypsilanti, Michigan, a car that's a couple of years old. His father, Connie, feels these are good training wheels to get him through his freshman year as a pro.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you can get through one of these things, I would imagine this is about as challenging a seat as you can get into in big-time drag racing. These funny cars with their short wheelbase and monster power, very difficult to handle. But Scott Coletta, for his young age, also has experience in top fuel ranks as well.
And alcohol dragsters. Johnny West, he's driven literally everything with wheels that can go down a drag strip. The experience definitely on his side here.
So we'll see. Well-financed team from Dad, Connie Coletta, bringing both the top fuel car and Scott's funny car in here. Johnny West, we saw him just scatter a motor in his first round victory, but right now rolling on, and the crew got that car back to the line, and I'm sure with a fresh and very stout motor under the hood.
Well, Scott's dad, Connie, lost in the first round to Gary Ormsby. He got in the airplane and said, son, you're on your own. Connie went home. The kid's got to do it himself today, Brock.
And he's got a big job in front of him, Johnny West, on a roll here. Very experienced driver, as you said. But right now, it's the kid versus the veteran.
And it's the kid away first. Scott Coletta with the lead. Suddenly, oh, and Coletta is sideways. He may have crossed the center line. Both drivers with their hands full. Johnny West lost traction, did a masterful job. Scott Coletta was hooked up, and suddenly the car just made a vicious move.
Sure did. I think he did cross the center line. Johnny West wins it at a relatively slow 6:13. Big top speed, 240 miles an hour. But all the excitement was in the near lane where that white and maroon car of Scott Coletta's was sideways every which way about halfway down the racetrack. There you see West. And Scott Coletta right now drifting toward that center line. If he crosses it, he's automatically disqualified. But apparently he does not cross the line, but overcorrects and then moves perilously close to the steel guardrail. One more twitch of the car, but by now it's all over. And Johnny West moves into the semifinals.
Thank you, Scott. Good race.
Well, Johnny West will be thrilled to know he's going to the semis, but the elapsed time off, 6:13.
Well, we're a little bit scary about the track. We're trying to build a hell of a lot of power here, and we made a transmission change, and apparently that wasn't enough, so now we got to try and curb the power even more. We'll probably get it down there. We'll do all right.
Did you see Scott Coletta running his slalom course in the other lane?
Yeah, everybody gets out on us in low gear, but after this thing starts getting into mid-range, nobody outruns us there, and I just hung with her, and he finally disappeared, and that was the end of that deal.
No concern he might be coming on your side of the racetrack?
No, Scott's plenty safe. I know him, and I don't have any worries about him at all.
Okay, nice job.
Thank you, Steve.
So Johnny West moves on here at the Citgo Cajun Nationals as we watch the crew of Gary Beck getting ready for his run against the King, Big Daddy Don Garlitz. There'll be more top fuel and funny car action after this.
Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge was established in 1860. Currently has 30,000 students enrolled. The building we see here is the LSU Memorial Tower, commemorating World War I soldiers. Well, about 30 miles away at State Capitol Dragway, there's a veteran of another kind. The Candies and Hughes funny car, the hometown favorite, driven by Mark Oswald. I'm Steve Evans along with Brock Yates. The action continues here at the Citgo Cajun Nationals.
Well, Steve, it'll be round 2 competition with John Force versus Mark Oswald. As you said, the hometown favorite, the Candies and Hughes team just down the road here in Houma, Louisiana. Of course, John Force from California in here as the low qualifier of the event. So this could be a good one. A lot of desire, of course, on the part of Candies and Hughes to show up well here after some pretty dismal seasons.
Well, John Force's consistency this year can finally lead to his first big win. Mark Oswald, of course, has won a World Championship, but then kind of fell on hard times. Earlier, Brock talked to the car owner, Paul Candies, about the last couple of seasons.
Paul, last year was not a great season for Candies and Hughes, and now back with the home fans here in Baton Rouge, it must add extra incentive to really perform.
Oh, yeah, we had a really off year last year at the beginning of the year. At the end of the year, we kind of got our stuff straightened around. The car ran pretty well. We found some problems with the car in mid-year, and by the time we decided what was wrong with it, we had crutched it around so many times on other things that we were really off base. So far this year, this new car has run really well. It's qualified well. We've had a little problem with it smoking the tires at times, and also a little problem with it keeping on the end of the racetrack as we did in Atlanta, but we seem to have found that problem, and I think we'll be in pretty good shape. But the extra home crowd incentive here is just, I think that's what we need to kind of spur us on. So my guys are ready to come here and do a good deal.
Perfect. Well, good luck. I hope it works for you.
Thanks.
Well, if that car wins, Brock, you can bet it'll be a hot time on Bourbon Street tonight. New Orleans just about an hour-and-a-half drive away. So, bringing the engine up to temperature is Mark Oswald inside the Candies and Hughes car, already up at the starting line saying, come on, let's race. That is John Force, his crew chief, Austin Coyle, out in front of that car. The man who wrenched Frank Hawley to 2 world championships in the famed Chi-Town Hustler. The OK sign goes to John Force. Austin feels the traction's good enough to hammer that pedal.
Well, don't forget, though, John Force is in a lane that has caused some problems over the day, so it may be that Mark Oswald has the better of the 2 lanes, but we will find out right now.
A good start by both drivers. It is Force losing traction. Oh, my. John Force drafts right in behind Mark Oswald. No harm, no foul. Oswald advances with a 584, 252 miles an hour. Well, that was a little too close for comfort, Brock.
It sure was, as we watched the 2 cars launch almost together. Actually, Oswald with a little bit of an advantage, but John Force trying his best, but right here, the racetrack puts him away. Probably a slick spot, and he makes a dive toward the center line. That, of course, will put him out, and fortunately, he misses Mark Oswald. That could have been a serious collision, but Mark Oswald goes on to victory.
Well, Mark Oswald keeps the hometown fans' hopes alive with a nice 584 win over John Force. Everything okay?
Yeah, fine. It was a little loose. I almost crossed the center line down at the other end, but managed to hang on to it.
He did cross the center line.
He did? Well, I almost did. It was just whoever stayed in their own lane. It's real loose at the other end.
Speaking of lanes, you had lane choice. The left would appear to maybe have a little edge.
Yeah, that's one we took, and I think we'd stay in there if we can. I think we raced McEwen, though, and he's got lane choice next round.
Okay, see you then.
Thank you, Steve.
And that lane choice could relegate Oswald to that dreaded lane that put out this man, John Force.
Yeah, qualified low, stumbled a little bit first round, and now over the center line, John. It looked like it just a kind of a slow drift.
No, it got loose. I had a lot of smoke in the cockpit, and he was out on me. I was chasing him. There was no way I could try to pedal it or do anything to correct her. I was just going to stay after and hope my luck held, and it just didn't.
Is that a situation where that centrifugal clutch starts to come in?
Yeah, we stretched her pretty good in low gear, and usually I don't go that far, but he was out on me, and we just had to stay with it, and we jumped this track and weather back and forth, and it just bit us.
Well, you took home a few bonus dollars for low qualifier. A fine job there.
Well, we're getting better.
I'll say.
So John Force's quest for a first NHRA victory continues as we get ready for more second round action. That will be Jim Head, the independent from Columbus, Ohio, who is so consistent, Steve Evans.
In fact, he won this race a year ago, Brock Yates, and in the final round defeated Billy Meyer, who he will race again here.
Of course, Head's tactic, which is well known, is to let the other man beat himself. Always consistent, always steady Jim Head. And Waco, Texas is Billy Meyer, not only a racer, but an entrepreneur. Earlier, Steve had that story.
Billy Meyer's name will soon be on more than a race car. It'll be on a racetrack. Currently under construction on the south side of Dallas, Billy Meyer's Texas Motorplex. the most incredible drag racing facility ever built on 500 acres. As you can see by this crude but accurate rendering, it's a stadium environment, an incredible timing tower with adjoining suites. The race cars reveal themselves coming under the tower, 30,000 grandstand seats. Now on 500 acres, Billy is also building a road course, a business park for race-related companies, a driving school, and with that kind of room, just about anything this aggressive young man should choose to conceive. Now this will also be the home of NHRA's newest national event, the Texas Nationals.
Well, right now, Billy Meyer's only thoughts are centered on this automobile, the red Oldsmobile of Jim Head in the far lane. Billy Meyer always ready to compete, but I'll tell you what, Steve, Jim Head we've seen him upset so many good drivers over the years.
Including Billy Meyer, but it's Billy Meyer away first. Meyer a good hold shot. It is Jim Head over the center line. Sweet revenge for Billy Meyer after his defeat at the hands of Jim Head a year ago. Meyer, a 5.89 second elapsed time. He'll go to the semifinals.
And he will be matched up against Johnny West in the Hawaiian. Meyer has the lane choice in that competition. The other pair in the semifinals, Mark Oswald against Tom McEwen. McEwen with that lane choice. And now, let's go to Billy Meyer, who has just disposed to Jim Head.
Billy Meyer takes the win light with a 5.89, but Billy, what you may not know, that will give you lane choice over Johnny West, and that could be a big factor.
I was a little concerned about that because about half-track, the thing just laid over. I bet it didn't run over about 235 or 240, and I guess it dropped a cylinder, but it's nice. We had lane choice and had time to watch him run, so we knew we didn't have to do the best thing. Main thing when it falls down like that, just hope the other guy didn't pass you.
So you actually had a little strategy going for you on that one.
Yeah, we usually do that, especially when, when we're kind of messing around and we ran the loyalty of first round. We always make sure to see where the other guy is. So we like to run behind him, so there's no sense in, if the motor's hurt, running it when it doesn't need to.
Well, it all worked.
So far.
Well, here's the crew that Billy Meyer will have to beat. That is the Johnny West Roland Leon crew. Field stripping their big Hemi engine to get ready for that competition. We'll be back with that and more after this.
Next time you complain about gasoline prices, consider that the fuel Don Garlich just poured in his race car, nitromethane, costs $24 a gallon. I'm Steve Evans with Brock Yates. We're back at the Citgo Cajun Nationals, and it is time for pro stock competition, Brock.
And Steve, here is a car and a driver that are becoming more and more a factor with each race in pro stock competition. Butch Leal, he's been around for years, but the car really starting to get cranked up. Against him, Don Coons in one of the factory-backed Oldsmobiles.
That is the old Sierra from Cayuga, Indiana. Don Coons still looking for his first NHRA win. He's got the equipment to do it now. Butch Leal last year gave Pontiac its first ever pro stock title at the Southern Nationals. And Brock, what a starting line reputation Butch Leal is gaining.
Well, if he'd lived 100 years ago, he probably would have been one of the great gunfighters of all time. His reaction and reflexes are second to none in this business.
And it puts a lot of pressure on the competition, Brock, knowing, and look at this, it is Don Coons succumbing to that pressure. Don Coons has red-lighted. Butch Leal skating all over the racetrack. Leal never lifts, though, a 7:63 elapsed time. Boy, that's amazing considering how much ground he covered there. And Leal's reaction time, a perfect light. And Brock, I don't care what anybody says, you can't do that unless you are gambling a little bit or anticipating.
Well, he quick draws every time he comes to the line. All right, the next pair, Warren Johnson in another Oldsmobile. That is one of the little Forenza model, even smaller than the car that Don Coons was driving. Warren Johnson kind of the lead man in this Oldsmobile Assault in pro stock, a real veteran, against Bruce Allen in the famed Rare Morrison automobile, a fine young driver from Michigan.
Indeed, the Rare Morrison Camaro at the hands of the late Lee Shepard won many a world title. So you know the fans will be up for this. It's Oldsmobile versus Chevrolet. Bruce Allen for Chevrolet in the near lane. That is Warren Johnson. Darn near won a world championship the last couple of seasons, and they are off the mark together. Warren Johnson with an edge at half track. Warren Johnson just ahead of Bruce Allen. Allen closing, not enough. It is Warren Johnson. His crew loving it. Johnson squeaks out a victory at 7:63 over a quicker 7:61. So Warren Johnson can be proud of his starting line lead.
Well, you can see the contrast in car sizes here. Warren Johnson looks like he's driving an automobile that is a midget compared to that larger Camaro of Bruce Allen's. Look at the contrast in sizes here. The tiny frontal area perhaps pays off for that Oldsmobile against maybe be the equal horsepower of Bruce Allen. So Johnson wins it by a wink.
That's right. The lanes are individually timed, so Johnson ran a slower elapsed time, but left the starting line first. And here is a man who's just darn happy to be back in drag racing here at the Cajun Nationals. It is Bob Glidden in the near lane with one of his older cars because he had a horrendous crash at the Southern Nationals a few weeks ago. And he is racing the plumber from Atlanta, Georgia, Reed Wisnett, finally changing from the Chrysler Hemi Pro Stockers to the more competitive Chevrolet Camaro. Brock talked to Glidden about coming back after that crash.
Bob, I know that it's an unpleasant subject, but the crash at the Southern Nationals is a reality for a professional race driver like yourself. Obviously, you prepare as best as you can to avoid those things, but how do you approach going back to racing?
Well, that was an unfortunate situation in one hand for us, but on the other hand, I walked away from it, and as you've seen, Brock, it was a devastating crash. So we simply went back to the drawing boards, came back for the time being with the car from last season. We did make some changes to the car around the cage, around the driver area, because since the crash, I myself, or the whole team, is thinking a lot more about the safety end of it. And from there, we just go race. This is our profession. You know, if you had an accident or saw an accident on the way to work, it wouldn't stop you from going to work. So we are here, we're racing, and it might take us a race or two to get really back in good form, but we'll be back.
Well, so far his form has been just fine. Didn't qualify quite as high as he's used to, but let's see what happens in round number 2. There is Reed Wisnett with the Camaro running the best elapsed times of his life. Beautiful, sleek, black Chevrolet. And the near lane, of course, is the Ford Thunderbird of Bob Glidden, the 5-time world champion. It is Glidden away first. Bob Glidden with a whole shot, but suddenly the Camaro pulls out in front. It is Reed Wisnett, a little out of control, but still winning it. The win of Reed Wisnett's Pro Stock career. 769, 178 miles an hour, and a race, Brock, he will not soon forget.
Absolutely, Steve. A great upset here against a man who, as we said earlier, is coming back from that big crash, running an older automobile that may not be dialed in quite the way he wants it, but nonetheless, we take nothing away from this victory by Reed Wisnett, who does a beautiful job holding off the 5-time world champion. Now look at how close this victory margin is. Literally decided by the electronic clocks. A 773 versus a 769 for Reed Wisnett. And a major upset in Pro Stock.
Tell me about the race with Bob. Did you know you won? He wasn't sure.
Yes, I knew I was out front, yeah.
Maybe he was just wishful thinking, huh?
Right, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Good job, Reed.
Thank you.
Okay, on to more Pro Stock action with a couple of men that have come so close over the years but have not quite snatched the brass ring, Steve.
Well, Brock, actually, there's only going to be one of those guys. Joe Lapone Jr. in the car built and wrenched by the famed Bill Grumpy Jenkins. He was scheduled to race Gordy Rivera of Tucson, Arizona. Rivera had some problems in round 1, couldn't get the engine repaired. But Joe does have an opponent. It's the timer in that timing tower. If he can run quicker than Warren Johnson's 763, he'll have lane choice in the semis over Johnson. Let's get the time as Joe Lapone goes across the line. He did it. Joe Lapone with lane choice at 7:59, 178 miles an hour. He played beat the clock very well.
He sure did. And as we've seen, lane choice can be critically important here. So Joe Lapone will face Warren Johnson in the Pro Stock semifinal, and Joe pulling out that lane choice with that beautiful run we just saw. Butch Leal and Reed Wisnett go against each other in the other Pro Stock semifinal. Butch Leal with lane choice there. So, with a little lull in the action, Steve has made his way to the funny car pits.
Well, Brock, we just stopped by to check up on the Tom McEwen pits, and just as we got here, they discovered that the crankshaft is hurt in this motor. They're going to have to go into the truck and get a brand new engine. But Bill Schultz, as he proved to us at Gainesville earlier this year, can put in a bullet that'll run even quicker. So they don't seem too concerned about that, other than, of course, the time and the labor required in all of this heat. But this is a dead player.
Well, that's the reality of big-time drag racing. You got to be ready to change engines at the drop of a hat. This man, however, he's ready. Gary Ormsby. He'll be up in top fuel after this.
some extra work going on in the pit area of Mark Oswald. They do not have lane choice when they meet Tom McEwen. Everybody there, including the driver himself, trying to find that extra horsepower, right combination to get the horsepower to the pavement. But meanwhile, we are ready for the semifinals of Top Fuel here at the Citgo Cajun Nationals. That is the high-tech hot rod of Gary Ormsby in the near lane. What an exercise in carbon fiber and steel, Brock Yates.
Well, there's an old versus new look right here, Steve. You can see Gene Snow, as you said earlier, in here with an older automobile while he revises his latest edition of a Streamliner. But right now, though, he's got to face Gary, who has the late stuff right now underneath him. So Gene Snow, I would say, at a definite disadvantage here.
He is also, Brock, because he does not have lane choice. Now, Ormsby has just recently kind of arrived with the combination. We're still not sure yet if he's got the consistency it's going to take to wheel this thing into the winner's circle.
Right, and of course, Gene Snow, as we saw earlier, that lane has produced big problems, most recently for Jim Head and John Force in the funny car ranks. But right now, Gene Snow also faces that challenge.
A dead even lead, no advantage off the mark, but look at Ormsby. He is just going to outpower Gene Snow. Gary Ormsby will go to the final round at 5.55, 255 miles per hour. It will be his third final round appearance in NHRA competition. He has one victory to his credit. And up next, it will be Gary Beck, the world's quickest drag racer at 5.39 seconds, up against the crafty old man from Florida, Don Garlits, the world's fastest, at over 272 miles per hour.
And as expected, Don Garlits has taken the lane that carried Gary Ormsby to victory, leaving, of course, Gary Beck with second choice, that lane that has caused so many other problems. And now let's go to the man who has moved into the finals.
Well, for Gary Ormsby, another textbook pass. A whole lot of fives. 5.55 at 2.55.
Well, it felt pretty good, Steve. It got a little hot up there on the starting line. I was getting a little scared, but came right on down through there real nice.
You know, a lot of drivers are telling me the engines are running real rich due to this weather, and in some ways that's good. At least they're not burning them up.
Yeah, ours is running quite a bit rich. We leaned a little bit there, but the air is not quite as good. And as you can see, it's still in good shape. It's just a little overheated right now.
Well, who would you like to race in the final, Don Garlits or Gary Beck?
Well, I'd like to have either one. I'd rather race Garlits, I think. I'd like to beat that guy.
Just for satisfaction?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to the starting line of Brock, and we're going to find out who Gary Ormsby's opponent will be in the final round.
Well, it very well could be that his wish will come true as we watch Garlits backing in, and a key component is the man running toward the car. Now, that is Chief Mechanic Herb Parks, a man who is truly crucial. Earlier, I had a chance to talk to Garlits about Herb.
Now, Don, we see Herb Parks come out on the line, maybe differently than some of the crew chiefs, and he seems to be working with your motor almost to the time you launch.
That's true. We are very, very fussy about the mixture on idle, and Herb is adjusting that fuel mixture almost for the absolute moment. Every blower, every atmospheric condition is different, and we must have an exact amount of fuel for a proper launch, and Herb is adjusting that. He looks at the pipes and makes that final decision.
That's his call, not yours.
No, I can't see it. The engine sounds good to me, and that's all I know. And it's up to him to decide whether or not the engine needs more or less fuel for that particular time.
And Herb's got a lot of credentials, a former car owner and driver himself. A long-time involvement with Don Garlits has been very rewarding for both of them. Gary Beck in that far lane. Now, Beck knows he may not have quite the traction at his command that Garlits does. Oh, Gary Beck left too soon. What a strange start. Gary Beck left, then grabbed the brakes, knowing he red-lighted. Garlits appeared to be a little confused. Just an odd moment here at the Cajun Nationals, but Garlits will go into the finals at 5.99. But the 5.99 will not give him lane choice. That will go to Gary Ormsby. And what happened with Gary Beck? Well, we can't even guess, Brock.
Well, let's take one more look at it, and of course, it's over almost before it starts. There goes Gary, and you see that fatal red light come on, and that is the end of it. So Gary just rolls to a halt, while Garlits gets a little sideways. He is going for lane choice, obviously. He's not going to back it down, and it does not pay off for him. No matter, though, he does move into the finals here.
Well, Gary Beck has got to be kicking himself right now, red lighting, as Big Daddy has some problems, only runs at 5.99, but that doesn't matter in the finals.
Well, I had to lift. I almost hit the guardrail. It, was caught completely off guard, and it got out of the groove.
Is just too much horsepower? Or?
No, I wasn't ready. He left so early, and it caught my motor down.
Stunned you a little.
It did. It stunned me. I couldn't believe what was happening.
He may have had a problem on the starting line. That may not have been just a driving error. He could have had a clutch lock, upper brakes, or something.
It was too early. It was way too early.
Okay.
So Big Daddy is mighty concerned, even though he heads into the finals against Gary Ormsby. But Gary, because of that 5:55 in the last pass, will have lane choice on a racetrack that is becoming very, very treacherous.
But if there is a man up to the task, it's Don Garlitz here at the Citgo Cajun Nationals.
That's Don Garlitz's crew chief, Herb Parks, in a familiar position on his back underneath the engine, checking the rod and main bearings in his motor. That is a critical component that always has to be done before each pass. So things are getting buttoned up there, but in the meantime, we've got more pro stock competition. This is Butch Leal versus Reed Wishnett in the semifinal round. But in the meantime, as these guys get ready to go, let's go to Steve with Gary Beck.
Well, Gary, unfortunately, this is the second time we've had similar conversations this year after a starting line episode. What happened this time?
Well, it's, you know, it's real hard to pinpoint, but I was just in there staged, and I thought I saw some yellow, and there surely wasn't enough of it so you get a red light.
Maybe sun glinting off the bulb, something like that?
Oh, I doubt it. You know, you get...
I'm trying here.
It's an anxious moment, you know, and we're just... you know, you're there, and maybe I was staged a little deep or something, but there certainly wasn't enough yellow to get away with it.
Thanks for talking with us.
All righty, thank you.
Well, Gary surely tried to squeeze that light, knowing he had the slipperiest lane of the two, and unfortunately did not pay off for him. Right now, though, Butch Leal faces Reed Wishnett and Steve Evans. Reed has got that bad lane.
And Brock, even though the pro stocks have about the third the horsepower of the funny cars and dragsters, a track that selects midway can be very treacherous for him. Butch Leal drills another beautiful reaction time. It is Butch Leal winning it as Reed Wishnett skates his way to the finish line. Leal goes to the finals for the second time this year.
With a 766, 180 miles an hour. That will be a target for these two men, Joe Lapone and Warren Johnson. They, of course, are going to have, whoever wins it will have to exceed Leal's 766 to get the critical lane choice. So as they complete their burnouts, let's go to Butch.
Well, for the second time this season, Butch Leal goes into the Pro Stock final. Butch, a 766. Happy with that?
Well, no, I got out there and it smoked the tires in third real hard.
I wondered what that was.
Yeah, I seen the smoke coming out. I said, what's going on here? And I could see it out of the corner of my eye, and it got a little crooked. And I said, well, at least I'm ahead of him here. And, you know, it's obvious it's slowing down because it's so hot. But everybody else is running good. I'm just seeing what happens on this round here.
Okay, we'll watch with you.
A whole lot at stake here, both lane choice and, of course, the victory and the chance to get into the final round. The little Forenza of Warren Johnson against the larger Camaro of Joe Lapone. An interesting matchup.
And in the smaller car, Warren Johnson may have his hands full of that far lane. It is Warren Johnson away first as they leave wheels in the air. It is Warren Johnson ahead at half track. Warren Johnson by a car length defeats Joe Lapone, and in the so-called bad lane gets lane choice over Butch Leal in the final with a 760.
Well, that was the drive of the day, really, in Pro Stock, Steve. He overcame a very slippery racetrack, drove a faultless quarter mile, really. As you see there, that is Warren Johnson, just about equal in terms of their reaction times, but it was Johnson who really overcame a lot of slickness right there. That's where everybody's been having trouble, right about half track, where everybody's been losing it in that lane, but not so for Warren Johnson as he goes on to a well-deserved victory over a very, very determined Joe Lapone. So there you have it. In Pro Stock, we have Warren Johnson and Butch Leal, and Warren Johnson pulls out lane choice with a beautiful drive at the very last second. Okay, we're ready for more funny car action. These are semifinal runs. This is one of 4 drivers in cars that'll go after the final title. That's Billy Meyer doing one of his patented big smoky burnouts. And against him, Johnny West in the Hawaiian, a man who now faces that challenge of that very slippery lane. So as they get ready to stage, let's go to Warren Johnson.
Joe Lapone congratulating Warren Johnson. Warren, you go into the finals against Butch Leal. You will have lane choice. You ran a bit quicker.
We changed the motor for that round. We put our original qualifying motor in, and hoping it would equal at least our qualifying pace, even though conditions aren't quite as good. And the 60 is pretty close.
Well, Butch said he was looking forward to racing the final. He said it's always good.
He likes to lose.
You owed him that.
So the war of words between Butch Leal and Warren Johnson continues. But right now, it's real war here as these two guys, Billy Meyer and Johnny West, square off. What do you think, Steve?
Well, I think there's a lot of pressure on Billy Meyer. He needs a victory, Brock. The race sponsor is also one of his car sponsors. A lot of pressure on Meyer. If he's got one thing going for him, it's become obvious to everyone by now, and that is lane choice.
Well, he's got the good one, at least so far, although Warren Johnson proved just a few moments ago that you can win in the lane that Johnny West is in right now.
At least you can do it in a pro stock. Of course, the funny car is just a little bit different animal. And the problem has not been the initial grip. That's pretty good, which makes it doubly difficult. You think you're on a good run, and all of a sudden, before you get off the throttle, the tires just explode off the wheels into smoke. So this is a very tricky racetrack for Johnny West. But Johnny West handling it beautifully. Johnny West pedals that car perfectly and darn near pulls it out. Billy Meyer may have won here at 586, but I'll tell you, the driving job of that race was done by the loser, Johnny West. He got off the pedal just perfectly, Brock, anticipating a loss of traction.
He had a little bit better reaction time at the green light, came out just a wink earlier, and looked like he was in it all the way, but it may have been the superior horsepower or perhaps maybe the slight engine traction for Billy Meyer, but he did pull it out. But not before Johnny West gave him everything he could ask for in a drag race.
A 586 puts Billy Meyer in the final round, and the elapsed time is not earth-shaking, but just to navigate this racetrack is a triumph of sorts.
Yeah, it's kind of like on a choppy ocean out there. The weather here today, you know, is humidity and stuff, and there's been a couple oil downs, and it's just not the best of conditions.
Tell me about the race. Did you see him at all, West?
I saw him in the first 100 feet, but the way we've kind of set our car up, I've seen about everybody. I think I'd see, you know, my grandmother out there.
You're having it leave very easy, in other words.
We're trying real careful just not to smoke the tire anyway, so we can just cruise. The people that have had the trouble get out there with a little more horsepower than us today and are, you know, get in a tire smoking problem, can't quite recover.
Who would you like to race in the final, Tom McEwen or Mark Oswald? Do you have a favorite there?
I've told you this before, I like to race by. Remember, whatever's
by
first.
yourself?
I've never figured it out, by myself. But I would say right now, McEwen changed motors. Candice has about as, I guess, the same record I have here. They've won quite a few times here, and so I guess I'd rather see McEwen in the final.
Okay, let's see if Billy Meyer is a trackside forecaster as well as an excellent race car driver.
Well, we'll soon find out, because one of these men, Tom McEwen or Mark Oswald, will face off against Billy Meyer in the final. So we've got a couple of beautifully prepared roll red funny cars ready to go, Steve. And right now, it's Tom McEwen in what seems to be the good lane, and Mark Oswald in that kind of handicap lane over there.
Well, you can bet that Mark Oswald was watching how Johnny West handled it. He's going to try to do the same thing. Oswald is in it all the way, just as West was, but it is Tom McEwen by a little over a car length. And the Mongoose, as he's called, takes that Corvette into the final round. Let's see if he has lane choice over Billy Meyer. He indeed does. A 585, 236 miles an hour. And you can bet McEwen will be in that near lane when we next see him.
Well, here we go again as Tom McEwen heads toward the finals. And not by much, though. Mark Oswald handles that racetrack very, very well, as did Johnny West. But probably the conservatism necessary was just the margin as Tom McEwen goes on to a convincing 1.5 car length victory.
Well, Tom McEwen, based on what we've seen this year, maybe you ought to change motors every round. It seems to work for you.
Billy Bones, I don't know if Billy Bones can afford them every round. How'd it run?
You got lane choice by 100th, 585.
Oh, good, good. Well, our luck's still hanging in. Mark and I, either one, haven't had much luck this year, but mine's a little better than his. Meyer's sponsor is sponsoring the race. So, one at a time, we'll see what happens.
You mentioned Billy Bones, who supplies a little of the cash for this operation. You hate to feed it a motor, but when it works, it's all worth it.
I always say when we heard an engine, I said, gee, Billy, I'm sorry, it was your engine in the car when it broke. He says, why is it always my motor when it breaks? I said, well...
Could be a good final round. Lane choice has got to help. Got to give you confidence, if nothing else.
Yeah, thanks a lot. We hope our luck holds up.
Okay.
There's to a whole lot of fans who've been rooting for Tom the Mongoose McEwen for these many years. One of the great names in the sport, and he will have lane choice against Billy Meyer, the young Waco, Texas entrepreneur who has already enjoyed victory here at the Citgo Cajun Nationals. And in the pits, Butch Leal gets ready to go against Warren Johnson in the Pro Stock Finals.
Along with Brock Yates, and we're back at the Citgo Cajun Nationals, NHRA drag races. That's the pit area. Billy Meyer, a lot of work to be done there before he's ready for the final round. In fact, we have only final races left. 3 of them. Pro Stock, Top Fuel, and Funny Car. And first up, Brock, will be Pro Stock, Butch Leal, and Warren Johnson. And look at this, Warren Johnson, even though he had lane choice, is going to stay in that far lane.
Well, he had low ET to get that lane choice in the last round, just squeezing out a 760 against Butch Leal's 766 that he had. So maybe Warren says, hey, it worked for me. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So he'll stay over there.
We've talked about the incredible reactions of Butch Leal, but he tends to push himself harder and harder as the race goes on. We saw earlier this year at the Gator Nationals, he was in the finals against Don Campanello, appeared to have a comfortable elapsed time edge over Campanello, but red-lighted. That's got to be going through Butch's mind now. He gave that one away, Brock.
So he'll try to squeeze the light. That is his style, but hopefully he'll be able to get a green here as he goes against Warren Johnson, and it's a red light again for Leal, Steve.
And only 1/100th of a second separated Butch Leal from a red or a green light. Warren Johnson's got to be smiling. His son on the right there, headed back to the pits, high-fiving it with the crewman. Warren Johnson wins the Citgo Cajun Nationals in 7.74 seconds.
172 miles an hour. He really eased it down the racetrack there. As we see, it was over almost before it started. There's the red light. So Butch Leal just coasts to a stop, giving it up and giving the race to this man, Warren Johnson.
Oh, that was a rough one, Steve. I think the heat got Butch and I both. Man, he red-lighted, which I felt he would because, you know, he had a pretty good race up to this round. And he gets a little nervous in the final round. He's had a propensity for red-lighting, and he was so early. I saw his red light before I left. So I was probably a little bit late on the thing, and it shook real bad. So I was fortunate to have a red light because I would assume he would have probably laid on a pretty decent run.
Well, a great job, Warren. Again, our congratulations. Well, that's one champion crown, Brock. What's up next?
Well, Steve, we've got the 2 most advanced top fuel cars in the world going against each other. We just heard Gary Ormsby's Streamliner catch fire there. His motor's running, and Don Garlitz will light up right now. Yeah, so they're both running, and they'll both be ready to do their burnouts in what is going to be a wild top fuel final.
Well, Brock, you have to give the racetrack advantage to Ormsby based on what we've seen today. But I think Garlitz's experience more than evens that up.
Well, he's been out looking at this racetrack, watching the other competitors run, and even though he's got that lane that may have a little bit of a hex on it at this point, you can be sure that Garlitz has made the right kind of blower adjustments, the right kind of clutch adjustments, hopefully to compensate for that loss of traction.
Some dark clouds gathering here as well. You know, Brock, Garlitz did a harder burnout than he has all day. He's trying to do a little track grooming himself, lay down some hot, sticky rubber a little further down the racetrack than he might normally.
Well, we've got an awful lot of humidity. It's really increased here as the day has gone on, and as you said earlier, Garlitz, having grown up in this climate, may have a little bit of an edge on Gary and his crew in terms of adjusting for that humidity.
Absolutely. And you heard Warren Johnson say Butch Leal has a tendency to get a little nervous in the finals. Well, I think Gary Ormsby has that same tendency. He has not been there nearly as many times as the man in that black car. And there's Herb Parks doing that fuel adjustment that Don told you about earlier, Brock.
Right. As Garlitz gets ready there, they button up that patented canopy of his that we're going to see probably on all the future top fuel cars. Gary running with an open cockpit, but that beautiful streamlined body shape. Between the 2 cars here, we are seeing the shape to come in all these automobiles.
And maybe even in front wheels. Look at the contrast there. They get off the mark together. It's Garlitz with the advantage. Ormsby a little sideways. It is Big Daddy Don Garlitz. Finally, the parachute comes out. And look what he laid down in that far lane. Just magnificent. A 549.
260 miles an hour. Who said that lane was offering any problems to anybody? Garlitz, a flawless run. The clutch adjustment, perfect. The blower pressure, perfect. As we watch Gary Ormsby go up in smoke, trying as hard as he can to stay ahead of the greatest drag racer of them all.
Well, Don, you might not have had lane choice, but you certainly made it work over Gary Ormsby.
The race at first started off pretty good, and then Ormsby's car faded back quite rapidly, and they said he smoked his tires. I couldn't see him. My car made as good a run as it made the entire event, except for the speed. Speed's down a little bit, but that's the weather. It's just too hot out here.
For the engines and for this television reporter, but I wouldn't trade places with either one of these guys in those 5-layer fire suits. Tom McEwen and Billy Meyer, they're getting ready for the Funny Car Final coming up here at the Citgo Cajun Nationals.
Well, there are only 2 cars left here at the Citgo Cajun Nationals, and 2 potent machines they are. That is the Corvette of Tom the Mongoose McEwen doing his smoky burnout, and he'll go against the Waco, Texas Ford Mustang of Billy Meyer. Steve, we saw Don Garlitz win in the lane that Billy Meyer's in. It's kind of been the underdog lane all day long, but I think Garlitz's victory sort of transformed all that.
Oh, absolutely. I think that was a real confidence builder for Billy Meyer. But Meyer has had this car set up so easy off the starting line, as he told us earlier, maybe even his grandmother could drive it. He doesn't dare go with that combination now, Brock. He's got to set it up, that clutch a little bit tighter to match wheels with Tom McEwen. You can't give an edge to either driver experience. I guarantee you they're both relaxed. They've been here a lot of times.
They sure have. There is no nervousness, believe me, in either man's cockpit right now. As we watch that little escape hatch come down on Billy Meyer's car, he will move into stage. I wouldn't imagine that people will wait too long here. The heat is oppressive, and if they're worried about building engine temperature, it's going to happen in about a wink of an eye.
And you see Tom McEwen hurrying up there just as soon as he saw Billy was ready. Neither wants to go to the line with any more temperature in the motor than they have to. And they lay right together. Billy Meyer, maybe with a slight advantage. Meyer smokes the tires. That opens the door for Tom McEwen, and he blasts right through it at 578, 249 miles an hour. Tom McEwen wins his 3rd ever NHRA National Championship event.
And in convincing fashion. Other than that motor replacement that he had earlier in the day, it was a flawless afternoon for the man from California. There you see it one more time. They leave just about together. No real advantage off the line for either man, but right now you see the smoke from Billy Meyer's giant rear slicks, and that spells doom for the young man from Waco, Texas, and an easy victory.
Tom, congratulations. When you've been racing as long as you have, these victories are especially sweet.
Yeah, well, we were lucky today. I don't know what to say. I want to thank Citgo for sponsoring the race and helping Billy Meyer's car through the deal, for him being runner-up. And I want to thank my crew and Schultz and everybody and NHRA and especially Coors. And it's been a great race. Nobody got hurt, and we're real thankful, and thanks a lot.
Great job, Tom. And again, our congratulations to Don Garlitz. What a duel with Gary Ormsby. And also to the Pro Stock winner, Warren Johnson. A fabulous job at driving in that Oldsmobile. For Brock Yates, I'm Steve Evans. So long from the Citgo Cajun Nationals at Baton Rouge.
The executive producer for American Sports Cavalcade is Harvey M. Palish. Produced and directed by John B. Mullen. Promotional consideration provided for and a fee paid by the Style Auto World Championship Team, the nation's premier